All right. We are live here with Sam Diamond, one of the original creators of the Daily Parks and Rec show, previously known as the Parks and Rec Done Right Facebook group. And so Sam was instrumental in building that group. This was kind of his brainchild, and he helped really all the different campaigns to grow membership. And so I wanted to bring him on just to kind of reminisce about those old days. And then as we're doing like a 2.0 rebranding, calling it the Daily Parks and Rec Show, what advice he has when it comes to just building online community. So Sam, how's it going today?
Hi, man. Thanks for taking a few minutes to have me on. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, no, I'm excited to be here and talk about the good old days and reminisce about the bagel bars. So
Right.
anyway, but
Right. I remember. Do you remember the what was it? Wine down. What something? Wine Wednesdays.
oh yeah, and then we had drinks. What was it like? Drinks with something or other, and basically it was a decent reason to get anywhere from tipsy to plastered with other Parks and Rec members on what was it like Thursday nights, Friday nights, or whatever. So
Yeah, this
yeah,
this is back when we were all stuck in our houses during the pandemic. Everything was frozen, and we were just trying to build community and reach out and have some kind of social activity. And so we ended up having socials at night, and then we even had like a coffee thing in the morning where, after work, we would just, on Wednesdays, we would just grab a glass of wine and just talk about what was going on in the parks departments and stuff. And so I think we had like 2 or 3 weekly events where we would do online stuff.
we did. It
Um,
was that was the what's I would say that was the best of days and the worst of days, man. So anyway,
right. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about, obviously we're creating an online community, but we have every parks department has some version of an online community, even if it's just a Facebook page, a Facebook group. And so somebody at a Parks and Rec department is in charge of building the online community. And I know this is what you specialized in for a long time. It's kind of how one of the reasons we connected and started working together. So just considering your expertise in that regard, maybe what are some steps you want to think about when you're trying to engage and build an online community?
yeah. So the the benefit that you have of someone in the parks department already making a community is that you want to have your audience defined pretty well. So if I guess if I was in their position, I would ask the question first of all, why? What's the point of building the community? Is it just simply is it a tool for me to connect with others, for other people to connect with others, and just have a general community where you can pass ideas? In the parks department itself, is this a networking space for people that would want to jump from one park department to another? Is this a way for me to foster some sort of a community to add to, I guess a resume if I wanted to move up within a government sphere? There's multiple reasons that you could want to start a community based around anything that a lot of people don't actually think through the benefits of the reasons why, or even the reasons why themselves. So that would be obviously the place to start, and you want to get it as narrow as you can in terms of who would want to be a part. So the podcast community that I'm currently in the middle of building at the moment, I've just giving you a reduction exercise to figure out exactly what that audience would be. I found that there were whole bunch of podcasts focused towards entrepreneurs, people in business, interviewing them about their success stories or whatever lessons. Market's completely flooded with that. And then I am also a single dad, so I started looking into podcasts for single dads wanting to talk about what see their content, what they were talking about. I found out that space was pretty flooded too, but I didn't find any spaces or groups in between the two, so self-employed single dads, right? So there's at least a couple 100,000, if not a couple million, of these single dads out there, but it's also specific enough to where if I wanted to become a member of the group, I could feel some sort of camaraderie with the other people in there. So it's not as general of a title of, hey, this is a group for everybody in Parks and Rec, but this is for people looking to advance their careers, people in this specific department of Parks and Rec, whatever the case may be. So
Hmm.
your question, why, who do you want to be a group? And then finally, what is the value that you're offering those people? Now that's, if you've done any study into different personality types in team building, you typically know there's at least one personality on the scale that's the party goer, that's never on time, is highly unorganized, but is the person that is the best man or the maid of honor at 14 different weddings. That's the type of person that you want to answer that question, is
Yeah.
what do you have of value to offer to the people in these communities, which it's always good to run a poll with some of the people there, or just think kind of out of the box of, I mean, dude, we created a group for Parks and Rec, and by a couple months in of having this group, we were having guys in guys in the what engineering departments and some of the directors get on a, what was it, a Zoom at the time, and just bullshit for an hour as
Hmm.
we're sipping whatever whiskey or scotch we decided to do, which is obviously not typically something that you think about when it comes to a Facebook group. But here we are, real life connections with people that we would have otherwise never had. You know,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
good.
Well, I was gonna say, they're using this. I see the Parks and Rec community using the group to network when they have needs. If there is a position opening up in their city for superintendent, director, assistant director, this was where we had nearly 5,000 Parks and Rec professionals across the country, and so they would use it kind of like as a jobs board, as a needs, and then they would ask questions like, "Hey, I'm thinking about what we're trying to run a 5K or remote 5K or something like that. Has anybody ever done this?" And so it was just a place that people would use as a resource. You have all these people pretty much doing the same thing in multiple cities. And so if somebody's already done something, they have no problem really giving them the roadmap of what they found. And so I saw a lot of that collaboration going on back and forth, job posting, anything like that. I thought was useful for them. But what else do you have? And do you think maybe speak about when building a community, how do you drive engagement? Because I know that was something you were really good at. Any suggestions around that? Oh, might have lost Sam. Let's see. Hold on. See if we can get it back on. Okay, there you go. For some reason,
I
you popped off stage.
have no idea what just happened. Okay, no, there we go.
Did you
But
hear my question?
no, I'm sorry. Run it by me again.
Yeah, so I guess when it comes to community engagement, that was something you were a master at, just getting people involved. And that's one thing I think you want to consider is not just getting people to follow you, but then how do you keep them engaged and keep them coming back to your Facebook group or Facebook page or anything that you might have.
Well, I think the short answer, which there's a whole bunch of different routes that you can really go to do this, but I think one of the two of the words you just said was the point, the coming back. You have to give them a reason to come back. That's straight up it. And it's not just a generic reason to come back. It's that you want to give something to something, you want to give something valuable to someone that is valuable enough to make them want to come back to the group and give you more attention and give you more eyes, because obviously more engagements, likes, follows, all those things that you get inside of the group is going to determine how far up on the group's list that you show up whenever people start searching for XYZ subject that they're in, right? So
Mhm.
a good barometer as to whether or not you have a cool, engaging, fun group or whatever is, if you're lucky enough to be one of the target people that you would want to have in the group itself, ask yourself the question, does this make me want to come back and post in my own group? You know,
Mhm.
if I didn't know the owner, if I wasn't the owner, if I wasn't building this myself and had no affiliation to it, would it give me enough of a reason in my life to want to engage with somebody? You know, so that could be a lot of times it's just open-ended questions that you can ask in the group, just really short. I wouldn't say any longer than 8 to 12 words. If anytime you can involve numbers in the question, for some reason people's brains are triggered to look at numbers before they're triggered to look at words. The Facebook has that feature where you can put a certain amount of characters, which I don't know the amount, but on a background color, which makes your question bigger for to capture somebody's attention as opposed to the generic white or blue that Facebook has in the background. So that's that. But just asking fun, short, generic questions. Dude, whenever I was trying to build engagement on my personal Facebook profile itself for people to pay attention to me, Christmas would come around, and one of the best questions that I would have all year would be, okay, settle the debate, real tree or fake tree. I don't care whether or not about the fake tree or the real tree. The point is I'm saying that to keep eyes on me, and it would start some sort of a heated debate on my Facebook profile, and all of a sudden I would have 2 or 300 comments below with people giving their answer because it took them half a second to read. It took them half a second to answer. I gave them pretty much the answers that they would give me written out already, just real or fake, and all of a sudden you're looking at 200 or 250 comments, which anyone passing by that group with the algorithm is going to see, wow, this group has a lot of engagements in it, which all you did was ask a kind of stupid question, you know?
Right.
So you want to try to avoid, yeah, at all costs, you want to try to avoid longer paragraph posts because
Mhm.
only true subscribers to the group itself that actually have gotten to a place to where they care about what you have to say are going to read that. Uh, it's just the truth. Um, Anything outside of that, if you can run, I mean, think about some way to run either a fun contest. I know we did multiple contests for people that were being added to the group, which is kind of against community standards to make to incentivize people to add their friends to a group now. But you can come up with one of a million things that would just make people want to get other people involved. A lot of
Mhm.
people, some people throw cash into groups as cash prizes, but it doesn't even have to be that eccentric. Like, so if you are gonna build something that would be fun in a group that could be like a community event virtually, I would say do something along the lines of, hey, find one family or one kid that means a lot to you that comes to your gym at your in your town, and get them to handwrite a poster or a piece of paper that just says, I love my Parks and Rec department because, and what they did in their life, and just one really short thing, and then encourage people to take a photo. And boom, you have like thousands, if hundreds, if not thousands of marketing pieces right there that were put together by a community standard. Plus, it was kind of fun to do, period. As
Mhm.
you get more fun engagement like that, in the group itself, you're going to see other things start to happen where, hey, we have a job posting here, we have a job posting there, or people will eventually, I'm assuming, look at your initiative to build something that adds to the community, which is the whole purpose of Park and Rec Department itself,
Mhm.
to get people involved in what it is that you're doing. That would speak a lot to me if it was on your resume. But shoot, dude, do you know how easy it would be to start a community group with families that come to your club and just start posting fun stuff like that that they can actually engage them in? I'm a single dad. If you were to sit here and tell me that there's a Facebook group, which there probably is, and I apologize if somebody sees this and I haven't seen it yet, but with Fairfax Parks Department, Fairfax, Virginia, that has all the local events and fun projects that I can take up 30 minutes of my kids' attention with. I join, so just coming
Mhm.
up with ideas like that that give them some sort of physical benefit whether that be some of their time back, potential for networking. Another idea is just interviewing other people. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but these are all ideas that I've done before. So
Right.
interviewing other people, which is what's the benefit of the group that we're talking in obviously right now. The cool part is if you set the standard for interviewing people on a basis like this, the reason why I'm doing it in the group that I'm in for single dads in business is I want to find more people to do business with, right? And I happen to be really connected to single dads. Now I don't have to approach them asking them for something like, hey, would you consider XYZ, me doing this for you and pay me to do it? Now I can approach them with a with a more giving attitude. Just say, hey, you have a lot to share, a lot to offer. Why don't you take an hour this evening or sometime this week to share it with a bunch of guys that could benefit from it? Everyone loves sharing what they've been through, their experience, what they've learned, and then boom, all of a sudden you have a friend for life that can move their relationship to whatever ends it is that you want it to move towards later on. But at least you're
Yeah.
coming into the relationship with something to offer. That's what a group gives you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that how you kind of poll the audience, ask them what's valuable for them. How have you used polls a lot on the Facebook groups? I noticed that when I had a New Year's poll that was kind of silly, but it drove a lot of great engagement. But
Yeah, so the things that are going to draw the most engagement are, in short, the things that are either colorful and moving. So a live video, anytime you go live in the group, that usually, or live on a Facebook profile, that's going to get the most attention. And then the reason why polls usually do well is because the same concept of the short question that I ask that draws that much attention. Now, in order to respond to you and give you a sentence answer, all they have to do is click a button, you know?
mhm,
So anything that makes it easier for them to respond in a quicker manner that would get them more engaged and ultimately build up their tolerance in terms of the time they're going to spend to watch a video like this, that's what you want to aim for.
right.
So,
Right, because and now let's just talk about the interview. So I know that's something that we've done in our past that you're doing with your new group that I've done with my Bitcoin community. Maybe let's talk about just the interview. Um, what's the format that you use?
so the format that I like to use up front is obviously before the interview starts, get to know the person a little bit. Just you, you kind of want to make it a little bit more warm than just hey, how are you? The second you go live, but I usually like to have at least like 3 to 4 core questions that I want to ask the person over the course of an hour. And then the rest of it, I kind of like to just riff and I like to see where the person wants to bring it themselves because wherever they want to bring it is typically the subject that they're most familiar with. And the subject
Mhm,
they're most familiar with, as long as it has to do with the topic or the group that it is that you're talking about, is where they're going to have obviously the most to offer. So, in the back of my brain, whenever I'm having a conversation with somebody that's one on one that I know other people are going to see, I'm asking them and I'm gearing them towards a line of thought that is going to be equally as valuable to the viewer as it is to me. So while they're talking, if you can imagine this, if they're the ship and I'm the captain of the ship as the interviewer because I can steer them wherever I want to go with the next question. The person is consistently gonna want to go to the right or the left, but I consistently have it in my head while I'm paying them the respect of taking in what they're saying to keep them moving towards the ultimate goal that it is that I want, which is providing the most value for the person that's listening. Which is why I kind of keep it open flow format. But one of the cool parts that I do at the end of almost any interview is I have a rapid fire set of questions that's just it could be 1 or 2 word answers, but just some fun questions at the end just to kind of end it on a high note. Those 3 or 4 core questions throughout the interview are the ones that I really kind of focus on that I want to be my rudders, if you will, for the conversation, and I usually ask questions that you're not going to find on the pamphlet of their life, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So, as I'm talking to a single dad, who runs a business, one question that I would ask them would be, "Hey, if I know you went through XYZ custody case, when was the one moment when you were about to break, when you thought you were about to lose your kids and your business was also weighing down on you at the same time? I want you to bring me to that moment that you almost broke, and then how did you get out of it? You know, something deep like that. Or if you're coming from a park and rec situation and you wanted to have someone on that was a director or whatever, think about the person that's viewing, who your audience is, and what is one question or two questions that you could ask the person that's about to come on for an interview that they haven't been answered in every other interview that they've had.
Mm.
If you've been a Park and Recs director, chances are you've asked, "Hey, if I wanted to move up in Parks and Recs, what should I do?" Everybody has asked that question at some point in the interview. Ask them, "Hey, what are the biggest mistakes you made in your career getting to where you've gotten, and what would you have done differently if you could go back? Are you happy in your position, or do you sometimes wish you would have gone into some other leg of government or into the private sector or whatever? Is it everything I think it's going to be?" Those kinds of questions are the ones that I would take the time to ask, just simply because if I was in that position, those aren't the most typical granola questions that you're going to see on just your average interview. So that's
Right.
that's that's my 2 cents.
So maybe look for something that's got a little stronger emotional content that's maybe, then it was in a difficult time and they had to make up like a not a career altering or life altering decision.
Hmm.
You had a cross.
Hmm.
What are your crossroads, I guess? How
Well,
did you handle those?
it doesn't always have to be. So my brain naturally goes to the crossroads just simply because it creates a compelling story, but doesn't always have to be some emotional crux. Like, so for instance, if part of your group, it's something that doesn't have an emotional crux but gives genuine value, if part of the group that you want to grow is people focused on building their careers in Parks and Rec, then and you're say you're interviewing a director, my one of the questions that I would ask is, okay, so if you have somebody that comes to you with a resume that wants to be the assistant director or whatever, right? That's the next position up. What are the biggest mistakes that you see on the resumes, applications, or the holes that you see? And what is one thing that would make my application or my resume different than everyone else you've ever seen?
Mm.
What are the biggest things that get me the job? As opposed to just assuming you know the answer, because there's a big chance that you don't.
Yeah.
So, you don't necessarily need an emotional crux. You just need something tangible that draws them in and gives them a reason, yet again, to come back and keep listening to you.
Yeah. Now that you're thinking about, now that we're kind of talking about, I've already thought of a lot of, I mean, I have a huge wave of directors coming on. And, like you said, you can take this 1,000 different directions. I really want it to kind of somewhat go to where they have depth, but then also find out, what were their, because hindsight's 2020. And if anything, I want to showcase that hindsight. Because these are people that have been through it and now maybe are looking back with a little more context and maybe would have done things a little differently now that they've seen it all play out. Um, that's kind of what I'm looking at. Just have a good, compelling show that Parks and Rec people will find valuable. Um, and then also just trying to, showcase the people that are here. I know they have a lot to share. It's really just a matter of creating the space for them to share it. I mean, I've listened to some of these people talk about their career. It's amazing what they're doing. Um, how about like community driven? Like, how would we serve the community that they serve? I'm trying to think around, these people are stewards of the land that's geared to, you know, make our cities
Hmm.
beautiful. It's quite a task.
Yeah. So the one the one note before I move to the community point that I would make is if you're going to look for good questions, good questions to ask a community based with Parks and Rec employees and or prospects in it, would be I would personally turn to the community itself and of those guys, like actually physically call them up and say, hey, if you had the national director of parks on the like in a back or in a back office somewhere and you were sharing a drink, what would be the one or two questions that you would want to ask, right? And then just make those the questions that you would ask a person. So that would be you just want something real that crosses that value threshold to get them to come back to the group and remember your group name. So that's what that has to do. If I were going to build, if I personally were going to build a community group for the community that I'm in as a whole, what I would probably do is the benefit of working for the government with Parks and Rec is that you're seen as a non you're not a nonprofit, but you're seen as as a entity that's not making a profit off of the community itself. So that's strictly there without an ulterior motive to sell a product. And there are a whole lot of businesses, contractors, other places that are willing to throw money into a community event or whatever it is that you would want to have happening for the community itself. So I would think about how to get their back, or how I would recognize that as an asset that I would have to build a community group that people would want to be a part of. Number one. So for instance, hey, we have a new baseball season happening. The local sports equipment dealer has offered to put up, I don't know, a new full set of equipment, for any and all of the kids that perform XYZ action around our new baseball season. Boom.
Mm.
Now you've got people that are coming back that actually have a tangible reason to come back to be able to get a new thing of sports equipment for not some national level campaign, but something that could be as small as St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana, or whatever the case may be, your town, your city, your whatever. A lot of the bigger issues that people think, or rather don't think of, when it comes to building something generic, a generic community group with something like that, is they just don't think out of the box of who else could I get involved that would want to be involved, and they don't think they don't think they have any good ideas because they never take the time to actually think, hey, what are some ideas that I could do that has never been done before, you know? And just simply something like that would bring a pretty significant amount of people to surround your baseball season, baseball club, whatever. But you could use that same concept for every club you want to start, like
Mhm.
4-H club, I don't know, soccer, you name it. Shit, dude, you get enough people, involved in that community and businesses, and get 100 businesses to donate $100 and give them advertising at the top of your group for a month or whatever. You could put together a scholarship for a kid to go to college. Like,
Right.
these are things that businesses want to have a good optics point in the community as a whole. And quite honestly, being involved in anything put together by the Parks and Rec department is good optics for that business as a whole. You know, you just
Right.
got to give them. You have to be the catalyst to give them an opportunity to be involved, because otherwise they're not going to come asking you.
Right. Okay. And then how about like top questions? Not questions. You said you did like speed round. What are some good speed round questions? I know one you had was books, top books.
Yeah, top books, top podcast, top, it's entrepreneurial, so I geared it towards that, which was the coolest or most effective tool that you've added to your business in the last 60, 90 days, which that could work for Parks and Rec, but some of them would be worst advice you ever got. Um,
Mhm.
Another one, what's your guilty pleasure? What do you consider your life's greatest success to this point? Um, just things that I like to gear those questions away from the value of speaking to the group and just really kind of get to know the person and end on a kind of fun note.
Mhm.
There's actually a what was the Cat Williams did an interview on Cat Williams did an interview with shoot. He did it
Larry
with
King?
yeah, Larry King, that interview,
Yeah.
okay? So that actually gave me a lot of solid questions to ask in
Mhm.
the speed round just because they were really insightful questions. So, that's what I kind of use as more or less a reference point.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good speed round. Um, okay, so then let's talk about the community. Um, Maybe try to put ourselves in the park and rec directors' shoes as serving their community, um, using social media. How does that play a role if you had to?
Well, if so, how does it play a role in general, or yeah, give me a little more
Yeah,
format
so I
to the
mean,
question.
so we kind of see where social media is going as far as people spending time on it. Parks and Rec is more of the get outdoors, in person, physical. It's almost the opposite of online. So how do these worlds collide? How do they maybe even collide is not the right word, but how do they interact? How does one help the other?
Yeah, so this is how I would say it. The all all social media is, in my opinion, is the way that it should be used is a more interactive version of what billboards and postcards were in the 90s. That's
Hmm.
that's all it was. So, yes, a can you build more of a connection with people on a personal level and answer questions and like yeah, you could. So could support lines in the 90s on postcards. You know, but you can build more of a community that way and have more of a connection and obviously make it a hell of a lot more efficient. But ultimately, as a Parks and Rec director, what you or someone in staff, what you want people to do is show up at your stuff, right? So the more that how you treat your community that you create on Facebook. By the way, don't try to do all 15 of them well. Don't try to do all types of social media well. Pick one. Like just pick one and master it.
Mhm.
If quite honestly, if you want to master two, then hire somebody else. But that's suggestion number one. Facebook's probably the best in general as of right now because it has your target market in there. But besides the point, how you treat the community of people that you've built in that group is exactly how they'll treat you. Okay. So if you engage with them, they'll engage with you. If you engage with them consistently, they'll engage with you consistently. If you give them crickets for 6 months, they're going to give you crickets for a year, you know? So it's a very reciprocal relationship based on the results that you're going to get out of it. Just you have to keep that in mind that if you're going to build a community, it's going to take work, and that's a consistent effort that you have to give it. But how do you bring the result of them showing up and social media together is the more consistent effort that you put into the group, the more people's eyes are going to be on it, and then the more community events that you have that are fun and unique, the more you're going to be able to post about it in the group, and then people are actually going to show up. So, like, nobody wants to come to your gym if nobody's ever there. Okay,
Mhm.
nobody
Right.
wants to come to your Facebook group if nobody's ever there. So if you want people to do what you're telling them to do of their own free will, to show up at your stuff in your actual community, then you have to give them what they're looking for, which is ultimately entertainment, eyeballs, and stuff to actually digest when it comes to your group, for them to actually listen to you when you ask them to do something, if that makes
Right.
sense. So all social media is, at the end of the day, is a way to build network, build community, but and ultimately get more people involved in what you're doing. It's just this century's current version of successful and effective marketing. That's all it is. It just
Yeah.
happens to be one that requires more than you making one ad and sending it out to 10,000 people in your local area.
Right. Right now, I don't see much as far as a live daily podcast, which is kind of the route we're going. So I think in that way we're kind of one, at least for now.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
if you want to come on a live show that's about Parks and Rec, that has your community, um, fortunately or unfortunately, I think we may be the only show in town. I'm encouraging other people to do the same, but for now, we're just kind of doing it as a service to the community to just give them a platform to
Yeah.
speak on.
Well, Craig, there's an idea. There's an idea right there to get more people engaged with you. Why not get ChatGPT, put in all of your ideas in short form and create a blueprint for somebody that wanted to start a community group like this one?
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually after our first 30 episodes, we were going to put together a little roadmap of how we did it,
Hmm.
and the hardware and software stack that we used to produce, edit, and distribute our content. And I don't know that that'll be valuable like to the directors. Maybe if you're like in media or you've got that hat assigned to you by the city
Hmm.
to, hey, you're in charge of the Facebook group, and there might be one of 10 hats you got. But so it'll be helpful for that group. That's kind of was our December and probably
Hmm.
this first week in January. But really starting right now, we're going to lean heavily into the interviews of successful directors, and pull out a good content there where it's just a
Hmm.
good solid interview as to their career and
Yeah.
what kind of advice they would give others.
Well, I mean, the you're on a good path, and I know we're kind of brainstorming live, literally, but you're on a good path with the blueprint of how to do that. But what if you were to brand it towards, like, so for instance, I know the you and I both personally know the sports directors in Tupelo. What if you were to use them kind of as your ideal market of who you wanted to go to, and just say how to use social media to double your baseball enrollments this year,
Hmm.
and to build a community around that one. It's just, if that blueprint if the blueprint that you're thinking about making, you're not sure how valuable it will be, define the market better and define the value better,
Hmm.
and until you have something that will get people to give you their email, or to join your Facebook group or whatever. But I'm just throwing ideas
Hmm.
out there. That's what I would be looking into, because the sports enrollments are free money for the community as a whole. So.
Yeah, those are really big economic engines, and that's one thing I wanted what is the most successful economic engine y'all have had? Is it sports tourism? Is it, you know, well, I know a lot of these are funded by property tax, but when considering generating revenue for your park systems, what have you found successful?
Mhm.
A lot of different topics we could cover with these guys. So if anything, I'm just trying to create the platform and a list of good, solid questions to where they're just really able to share what they've learned
Mhm.
so far.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
and it's also an interesting conundrum that you put yourself in, because the parks director, not everybody wants to be park director, right? Or not everybody wants to move their way up. So how valuable is it to ask park directors about their experience? Like, are you going to speak to other parks directors? Or are you speaking to somebody who's ambitious in the government sphere? These are all you know this, but these are all things to just consider up front for those of you that are considering creating your own community. These are all things you have to consider up front, like who very specifically am I wanting to talk to, and what do they care about. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good generic question you want to answer when you're creating content is what's the purpose? Like,
mhm.
and obviously our purpose here on the Daily Parks and Rec show is going to be substantially different from a community trying to connect with their citizens or coaches or, little league teams or parents. That's not necessarily our goal here, but you still may use the same tech or the same hardware or it's the same, pretty much same thing you're trying to do. It's just different purposes.
Yeah, yeah. I will just, if you're out there, based on the value pitch of this episode of making a community group, uh, if you're out there and you're considering whether or not to build a group for your community, just a complete a complete ego ad that you have, for you personally as you're building it. It's just really freaking cool to start a group that other people end up caring about and will show up somewhere because you told them to, and do something cool for your community. Like,
Yeah.
and you ultimately start to build a life that's pretty cool, just simply because you were brave enough to put it out there and allow other people to be involved. So that's what I got to say.
Yeah, that is rewarding for me personally. I can tell you the comments, the encouragements I get, people telling me keep going. A lot of times when you're behind the camera, you don't think you're being successful, and then you get some comments that are like, "I've been paying attention. I've invited people," and that's kind of my fuel. So keep it coming, guys.
Mm,
Whoever's doing that. Um,
yeah.
well, all right. So we've got 8 minutes left. Let's go into some of your speed rounds. I
Oh,
can ask
lovely,
you.
lovely. I'm glad I could start this tradition for you. Go ahead.
You did. You started the tradition well. So let's start off with an easy one. What are some top books? Now I know it's not obviously Parks and Rec directed, but
Yeah. Some top books that, just for my life in general, on a more personal growth side of things, I actually read the Bible every day, so there's that. I don't care what your beliefs are. That's the best success book ever written by my knowledge. I'm looking over at my bookshelf right now. The As a Man Thinketh is another personal growth book that I
oh, I love
love.
that one.
4 Hour Work Week. Actually, one book. This is one that'll come from side left field. I got for my son for Christmas. It is a it is a children's book with one line per page, and it is a conversation, between a boy and animals that discusses life's biggest top issues that there are, in a childlike way that's brought me to tears two or three times. The title is the boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse. So you ever get a chance to read that, you can read a 150-page book in about 30 minutes. So,
What's one of the questions that you got out of that book, or do you remember one?
one, the boy, yeah, you'll like this one. The boy and the horse come to the edge of the forest. The boy says, "I can't see my way through." The horse says, "Can you see your next step?" The boy says, "Yes." The horse says, "Then just take that."
Wow.
Big life lessons like that throughout. Another one, would be, the boy.
Well, let me. I'm so glad you said that. I actually was watching something on LinkedIn the other day about this. It was this girl that was a fighter pilot, and being a fighter pilot is super rare. Being a female fighter pilot is rare,
Yeah,
squared,
yeah.
cube maybe.
Mhm.
Um, but her instructor said, "Look, over the next 6 months, you're just going to be completely overwhelmed, and there's nothing we can do about it. You've got so much to learn. So when you find yourself in overwhelm, just fight the alligator in front of you. What's the closest thing you can fight? And similar, take that next step." So I can imagine uh, when you're managing an entire city and all the staff and facilities that a Parks and Rec director does. Sometimes you just got to focus on what you're doing today and forget
Yeah.
about the rest.
Well, humor me with one more quote from the book that'll be good for any person in a leadership position at all in any Parks and Rec. Another quote from the book is the boy asked the horse, "What's the bravest thing you ever said?" The horse said, "Help."
Wow. That is
So
true, huh?
yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
there you go. That's been my favorite book discovery so far recently.
So what as far as podcasts, what's some good podcasts or YouTube channels? I guess I put those in the same boat.
Yeah, YouTube channels. A lot of mine have to do with entrepreneurial stuff. Um, either that or like true crime. Honestly, probably the biggest one podcast wise is going to be it's going to be so generic, but it's probably the Rogan podcast. It's
Mhm.
just simply because every time I talk to that guy, talk to that guy. Dear Lord, yeah, that should tell you how good he is at making you feel like part of the process. Listen to his podcast. It gives me new ideas on new questions to ask, but it also just the depth and breadth of his guests. There's always something to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, he
So,
does. He's such a great interviewer. I know he comes across sometimes like an ogre, but he's not. He's such a deep
mhm.
thinker for 4 hour interviews, 3 and 4 hour interviews. That's just amazing that he pulls great content out of people's lives.
Yeah,
Um,
he
and
definitely one of the favorites.
yeah. All right. Worst advice you ever got?
I'm gonna I'm gonna steal Cat Williams' answer from that interview. Never change.
Yeah. Now, how is that? How is that the worst advice you've ever gotten?
The it's the worst advice. It's the worst advice I've ever gotten because it came with the best of intentions from people that love the heart of who I was and who I am at the time. Which if I had never changed, I would not care nearly as deeply about other people as I do now.
Yeah.
Um, Not to mention, I wouldn't have half the skill set or the mindset that it is that I have now to be able to give a what about them and actually do something about it. You know,
Right.
there's only a couple consistent things in life, man. It's death taxes, and change. So,
There you
you
go.
know, I enjoy that.
All right, and last one is life's greatest to this date. I know we've got a lot coming, but
Yeah.
to this date, what's your greatest success?
That one's easy. It's my kid. So it's my
Yeah,
son. Um, yeah, I arguably unbiasedly have the greatest son on in this country at a minimum. But he's growing up doing well, and it doesn't matter what happens in my day. Every time I pick him up, as long as he's happy to see me, I'm a success that day.
fantastic. Well, Sam, thank you so much for coming on the show. One of the original creators of the Parks and Rec Done Right, now the Daily Parks and Rec show. So I appreciate your contribution, and we're definitely getting that community growing. So you were a big part of it. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, man. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. All right. Take care, Sam.